Chapter 5, Broken Rook. We talking about Rory? Oh, we're back down here. Alright, let's go. I was all ready to start theorizing, and then I'm like, oh, we're in the catacombs, let's go! I was in the catacombs again. Not as deep as I'd ventured before, though. I wanted to keep my promise to Celeste. As usual, I was just carrying some items down to be left in the already cluttered space below Cordis. Not my idea of fun, but I needed a break from Sylvia's journal. I sighed, leaning against the door leading to the storage area under the stairs. I still found the journal helpful, but the further I read, the more I uncovered, the more uncomfortable I got. At first, I hadn't been able to put my finger on the problem. I thought it was just because of reading the journal of someone who'd passed away. But no. It took a while, but I realized the problem stemmed from the journal itself. Parts of it read more like a letter, a message to someone else. As if she hadn't written it for her own sake, but for someone else's. For, well, as impossible as it sounded, for my sake. Okay. Of course, that made no sense, but at times while reading that, a strange feeling would creep over me. The certainty the words were meant for me, as if she knew I'd be reading it one day. Have we dealt with any timey-wimey stuff yet? I can't think of anything particular. Other than, like... what's the word? Is it precognition? Premonition? Those premonitions that Morgan's had of, like... And they haven't even really been premonitions. Yes and no. One was the attack on the mansion, which was basically happening simultaneously. The other was Ari and Caleb coming to go and find her at that cafe. Would Sylvia have had something that far in the future? It had spooked me a little. Okay, we're having a flashback to reading the journal.
The thing is, I'm convinced Espers have been around longer than most of us think, you know. There are many people who say Espers were created by the nanites when humans arrived on Arcalis. I don't believe that's true. If someone delves back into our history, you can find evidence of Espers dating back to before we left Earth. It's a history many people ignore. A history many have forgotten. But even though Earth is far from us, light years and centuries from Arcalis, that history is still our history. That small planet orbiting a rather ordinary yellow star birthed our people and sheltered our kind, didn't it? And I believe it is the birthplace of Espers as well.
I recognize those words. I recognize them, and there should be no way for Sylvia to know them. Not to mention to put it into quotation marks? I quoted those words to Jack the day we met. It was something one of my lecturers had said once. There was the chance he'd plagiarized them from somewhere else. Some text that Jack's sister had read. I tried to reason that had to be the case. But even as I told myself it, the possibility existed. It rang hollow. It's also interesting her theory that Espers actually started on Earth and not on Arcalis. But why would that history be erased? Why the narrative that Espers have only begun here on the new planet? I had stared down at the display a long time after reading that bit. The words sat against the other text out of place and uncomfortable. And after that I couldn't quiet the anxiety fluttering in the pit of my stomach. And that was just the beginning of it. A part a little further down had really got to me. Sylvia spoke about research she had done dating back to the 21st century on Earth. She said that at the time, ESP was viewed as a pseudoscience. It had been considered unsupported by research at best, pure fantasy at worst. I had never thought of the history of Espers. As she said, I'd always believed them to have been created by the nanites once humans reached Arcalis. And the idea of a deeper history, I had to admit, was fascinating. I sort of wished I could look into it myself, but I didn't have full net access, so... Anyway, I doubted there existed a full historical account available to read. Not for the general public, anyway. Maybe in Endgame's library? The Endgame archive might be something else. And it seemed to be something Sylvia looked into pretty extensively herself. Her journal mentioned that even on Earth there had been rumors of people with strange abilities like telekinesis or precognition, but very little evidence to support it. Yeah, theokinesis. Yeah. Have we... You know what? Let's just read this, because it seems relevant. Any mind or sight-based psi ability. This includes precognition, the ability to see the future, postcognition, the ability to see into past events, psychometry, clairvoyance, and all similar abilities. Bishops tend to specialize in theokinetic skills, most notably precognition. Theokinetic abilities are some of the most mentally taxing abilities and can often result in dangerous mind bursts and psi fatigue. But beyond that, there are other mental traumas associated with seeing future and past events. Many theokinetic specialists are under extreme mental burden with the things they see, and trying to pick out a correct path among the information. The emotional strain is significant, and it's not uncommon for these specialists in Endgame to retire early, or move into other divisions to preserve their own mental health. At the time, people speculated about secret government projects around ESP. Entire books were written on the subject, by those claiming to be Espers, those claiming to have studied them, or those claiming to have knowledge of the supposed experiments. In fact, later historical accounts from the 22nd century seem to validate some theories, she said. It might not matter at all, but she said something that stood out to me. F-class Espers might be our future, but they were also our past. The nanites were just a catalyst to reconnect the future to the past, nothing more. Her journal took on a curious tone at that point as she talked about looking back through time. This ability was called postcognition, a sight-based ability common among bishops. It was related to psychometry and precognition. Books only told you part of the story when it came to history, Sylvia said. But what if we had the ability to look back and see it for ourselves? What if someone with a particularly large sphere extended their sight through decades or centuries, across space and time, traveling back to see the hidden parts of history that had been forgotten? I found it a fascinating prospect, but one I'd never thought about before. But theories weren't frightening. They were just theories, right?
What if at the same time one person looked back, another looked ahead? If they looked into the right moment, then... Across time, space, and all physical barriers, could we make contact? Could we see one another and speak? Could I tell you everything I think you need to know for the path ahead? I wonder.
That does seem rather pointed, doesn't it? For 1 second, as I stared down at those words, wondering at her sudden shift in tone, is she gonna leave us, like, a hint-a-roo about how to contact her later? Or what time period we should be contacting her in the past or in the future? I don't know. Time travel gets really wibbly-wobbly stuff. For one terrifying second, another room overlapped mine. Another bed, another set of hands, a quiet voice making a strange, wondering sound. Almost on instinct, I flung the journal across the room in shock. The vision evaporated in an instant, but I was left shaken and unnerved. I don't blame you. After that, I fled downstairs to the lobby, heart still hammering and unpleasant prickles racing up and down my arms. Is there any such thing as, like, psi ghosts? Like I'm thinking of, like, imprints, you know, like, that have been left behind. Is that a thing? And now I was helping with cleaning and chores again because I needed the distraction. I carefully set down a box of ratty clothes, leaning my head against the wall. It smelled like mold and dampness down here, but I took a deep breath anyway, then wrinkled my nose, full of regret. I turned my head to stare into the darkness of the corridor beyond me. I had promised Celeste I wouldn't wander around down here, but I had to admit it was tempting anyway. Especially now. Is this the other side? I left my place and moved further down the corridor, right to the edge of where the light faded and everything branched to the right. A prickle of apprehension played along my spine. At once, I thought of Sylvia's words about peering through the long marches of history, not by examining physical evidence, but by using sight across that expanse of space and time. It sent anxiety spiraling through me again. Why it unnerved me so much, I didn't know. It gave me an undeniable, sickening feeling when I thought about it. Half anxiety and half something else. If Psy could open up doors to the future like that, I wasn't sure I wanted to ever learn to use precognition. Just thinking about foreseeing my death or something left me feeling creeped out, and that was no easy feat. Maybe I just hadn't adapted to all this as well as I thought I had. I stood staring into the darkness, thinking those kinds of happy thoughts when something moved. Or I thought something moved. It seemed like the darkness far down the corridor shifted, and that shift was accompanied by the sound of a stray footstep. I froze for just a split second, listening for further movement. Nothing. Jack's warning about how people might be wandering around down here popped into my mind. I could still be jumpy from the thing with the journal, but I only waited another second before I turned and fled back to the stairs leading up to Cordis. If there was someone wandering around in the dark, I didn't want to know about it. As soon as I reached the back stairs, I felt silly, like a child fleeing a dark basement because they'd watched a scary movie the night before. Pull yourself together, girl. I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. Psi was inexplicable. I knew that much already. We managed to somewhat understand the science of it, but that didn't mean it didn't also have its mysteries. Like anything else we thought we understood. But just because it was mysterious, I shouldn't get all worked up over words in a nearly decade-old journal. Is this about years? Yep, time measurement. That's what I told myself anyway. And I didn't need to let my worries about my newfound abilities make me jumpy to the point of running from what I could assume to be probably a rat or something. Definitely not some wandering person or ghost from the past. A ghost? I climbed the stairs, half rolling my eyes at myself. I really am just more stressed than I realized. I struggled with being cooped up with only a few evening walks with Jack to stave off the cabin fever, especially when my only real escape during the day was practicing or getting tips from a journal. At any rate, that was the last of the things they'd needed me to take down, so now I had a break. That meant fetching a cup of hot tea and curling up on one of the sofas. It might just be me, but it felt colder today than it had been. Chestershire was colder than Cisalis anyway, but I was half tempted to get a blanket from my bed to wrap myself in. This place has a severe shortage of good books to read. Maybe I should go out for some fresh air for a while. I wanted to look around on the roof a bit anyway, that whole garden thing. It was still just an idea, one I didn't even know would come to fruition. But it couldn't hurt to think the details through more thoroughly. Maybe I'll do that. Carrie! I love your outfit too! Everyone's got such cool new outfits.
Morgan, there you are. Sorry to bother you, but are you busy?
I peered up at the familiar woman as she came to me holding an armful of what looked like blankets? She, like June, was one of many people I'd met since staying here. I'm not busy. What are the blankets for?
Looks like the heating went out again and we don't know when it'll be fixed.
I thought it felt colder, but I figured it was just me.
Not just you, unfortunately. It happens sometimes. This building's old and you can imagine how well it's been maintained. We've been doing our best since we set up Cordis here, but not like we have a slew of seasoned mechanics to take care of the equipment for us day to day. Anyway, since it may be like this a few days, we're handing out spare blankets to some of those who might need them. I was wondering if you would help. Rowan went out with Jack and a few others earlier, so I'm a little short on hands.
Of course I'll help. I abandoned my tea and stood, holding out my arms for some blankets. Where did Jack and the others go? Doesn't he tend to go out alone?
I don't know the details. Looks like a couple of other people have disappeared, and they think they have a lead or something.
She handed over some blankets, piling them until I almost couldn't see over the stack and had to hold it in place with my chin.
One of them was spotted down in a nearby area, so they went to check it out.
I hope they find out something. Feels like there's been little progress on it since I got here.
There hasn't been. I know they're all getting desperate. But we have other problems to worry about, as you can see.
So who do I give these to?
Elderly first, anyone who's sick. We'll give the extras out to the kids. The rest of us can make do. I figured we'd give one to that new kid, Rory, too. Celeste suggested it anyway.
How is he?
Celeste said the psi fatigue is better, but he's still recovering. The fade symptoms are going to stick with him. She can't fix that. I guess she's worried about his mental state, though.
I was hoping being somewhere safe for a while might help with that.
Well, I guess he's calmed down a little, but the guy is clearly traumatized. Badly. Whatever he went through must have been terrible. Half the time he still acts like he's being hunted by something.
Has he talked about it at all? Given any more details as to what happened?
Not really. He won't open up to anyone. He seems to like kids, but it's not like we can send a kid in to give mental health advice.
She gave me a careful look, a frown flitting over her features.
Actually, Celeste and I were talking about it earlier. She thought, well, maybe you could try to talk to him a little when you give him one of your blankets later.
I'm not a counselor.
No, but he seemed to trust you a little. Look, I don't think it's necessary to know everyone's secrets all the time. Everyone here has their stories, and some of them are pretty terrible. But this is a special case. We need to know where he's from, in case people start looking for him, in case there's some threat out there we need to watch out for. And mostly because he's suffering and needs help. We don't exactly have a psychologist on hand to talk to newcomers. And at this point, his talking to anyone would be better than sitting alone in his room muttering to himself.
I just worry I won't be able to help, or that I'll make it worse.
Just try to talk to him. Even a little. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, I'll try. I'm not making any promises, though.
Fair enough.
After that, Carrie went off to dole out her load of blankets. She told me to finish my tea first, but I only took a few swallows and left it. I wouldn't be able to enjoy it now anyway. Everyone was grateful for the additional blankets, and I got a variety of stories about the last time this happened. Only a few people had the skills to fix something like this. Most who worked in the area had basically taught themselves whatever craft they knew. If this follows Case's route, I think he came and visited like shortly after the heat had died in the building, so maybe he's gonna show up not necessarily today, but like the next chapter or two? Potential? There were a few casual mechanics or people with technical expertise, but their skill level wasn't always high enough to fix things like a heating unit. And unfortunately, some of them were busy with bigger problems and might not be able to make it down to Cordis to check it out anytime soon. For instance, someone named Noah was busy trying to work out the situation with the dome's environment systems, as well as other larger infrastructure problems. Interestingly, someone suggested that they'd contacted Kesa as well. He sometimes dealt with problems like this himself. That surprised me a little, since he didn't seem the type. It would be nice if he came by and I could ask about my parents in person. And just like that, I've summoned him with my thoughts. But that was something to worry about later. For the time being, I just worked on getting the blankets handed out and checking on the ones who needed it. When I got down to my last blanket, I headed for the room downstairs where Rory was staying, having left him for last. It wasn't wrong to say Rory and I had more of a connection than he had with anyone else. but I didn't think that would be as much help as they were hoping. I stood outside his door and knocked hesitantly. A quiet voice responded to come in. "Hey, you're looking better with your haircut." I poked my head in to find him sitting on the bed with his knees drawn up to his chest. In that moment, he looked so young, so small and so frightened. It felt like a vice squeezing my heart. I wanted to help, but didn't know if I would be able to. "Rory? I don't mean to bother you, but we were passing out spare blankets. Seems like the building heating is having issues."
Okay.
I stepped inside and walked to the bed, setting the blanket next to him. After a moment of hesitation, I sat on the edge. "How are you feeling? They said your psi fatigue was better, but I bet Celeste is insisting you stay in bed. She wouldn't let me up for days."
Yeah. She worries a lot.
It's not a bad thing to have people worried about you. To be honest, I've been worried about you too. His eyes flickered in the dim light as he looked my way. "How have you been?"
I'm not sure.
That's understandable. When I first got here, I felt so lost and overwhelmed. Want to talk about it? I moved closer to the head of the bed where he was, pulling the blanket with me and wrapping it around him the way I might do to a child. Aw. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but sometimes it's good to get it out.
I don't know if people will believe me. Believe what happened.
With everything people here have seen, I can't imagine them not believing you. Many have been through things the rest of society might find unbelievable. Myself included. I know it's probably scary to think of talking to people about it, though. But at the very least, I don't think you have to worry about being believed.
I'm just scared. It feels like if I talk about it, they'll find me again.
So he was on the run from someone? The way he talked, the way he was so afraid. I got the feeling he wasn't just running from law enforcement. That brought up so many questions. Based on his accent, he was from the Day Territories. Was he running from a group there, then? They have reverse cages all around this place. There are people looking for me, too. And they haven't found me yet.
I know.
Come to think of it, if that was the case, how had Rory followed me? Good question.
I never said it, but I'm sorry for before. I put you in danger. In Solace. Maybe even now.
Because of the people you're hiding from? He nodded. Okay, so that was something I needed to tell the others. But for now, I needed to comfort him. I would have been in danger, no matter what you did.
But he found you because of me. He was looking through my eyes. He uses people like a network to see what's going on in faraway places where his sphere can't reach.
He? Yes, this he again. Rory squeezed his eyes shut, gripping his legs tightly as he spoke.
I'm afraid he'll find me again. You helped me get away, but what if he finds me? What if he finds us both?
He was getting worked up again, and that wasn't why I was supposed to be talking to him. But I wanted to know who this he was. It wasn't the first time he was bringing this up. Someone had done something to Rory, and that person was looking for me as well. I wanted to find out who, but I didn't want to upset him. No, I'm not an analytical person, and I mean, he's only been here for a very short time. He's told us, like, some. I think that's good for now. When he's ready, he'll probably tell us more. As much as I would love to get all the answers, but I think he would just spiral. So let's calm him down. I didn't think there was any value to getting him worked up right now, especially when I was supposed to be helping him feel more secure. Let's calm him down for now. I'll talk to Jack about it later. It's okay, Rory. You don't have to talk about it right now. I set a hand cautiously on his arm. He flinched, but didn't move away. It's okay to not talk about it yet. And no one is going to find you here. Even if they do, you're with people who care about you. No one will let anyone else hurt you. This place is about that.
What if you can't stop him?
I remembered back to that moment in the vivarium where Rory was attacking me. I had touched something in him then, and brought him back. I gave his arm a very gentle squeeze and leaned closer to look in his eyes. I already did once, didn't I? His eyes went wide for a split second before his face relaxed. A sad look passed over him and he curled into a tighter ball. A shaking breath escaped.
You did.
If I did it once, I can do it again.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be afraid anymore. I brushed his faded hair from his eyes the way Mum used to do for me when I was upset like this. My heart. Rory, I feel so sad for him. But I know it's difficult to just leave things like that in the past and move forward. Just take your time, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Morgan.
You don't have to thank me. I stood and started to leave. He caught me by the wrist.
Will you stay? For a while?
I was going to say I would, but there was a shout from outside, and sounds of some kind of commotion. We both looked to the door curiously. I'll go see who that is, then come back, all right?
Okay.
I left him there and stepped into the hall, pulling his door carefully shut behind me. I hadn't learned much, but I needed to tell the others what he'd said. Rowan wouldn't be happy about it. For now, I needed to find out what was going on so I could get back in there and sit with him for a while. Poor man. Carrie, what's going on?
I think the group that went out with Jack returned. Celeste went out to meet them. Were you with Rory?
Yeah.
How'd it go?
I don't know. I don't think he's ready to open up yet. I guess I learned a little? I planned to go back in after seeing what...
Get her over here to the sofa! I need to check her over right away! Something's wrong.
I was torn between wanting to go see what happened and wanting to go back to Rory like I promised. Carrie must have been able to tell. She gave me a gentle nudge towards the group.
I'll go check on Rory. You see what's up. Come give me an update later.
Thank you, Carrie. I will. She disappeared and I went to join the group near Celeste, worry gnawing at me. Because Jack and Rowan were nowhere in sight yet. But June was carrying a woman I recognized but had never spoken to, and she looked like she was in bad shape. I hovered on the edges of the group watching June take the woman to the sofa as Celeste directed. The woman wasn't unconscious as I first thought. Her eyes were wide open and her lips moving, though I didn't think she was speaking. I edged closer to hear what Celeste had to say. There wasn't much I could do to help with the current situation, but I at least wanted to know what was going on.
Looks like you were right. She definitely encountered a mind bomb. A nasty one at that.
What the hell is a mind bomb? A sort of psychic trap that can be left in a specific place and triggered when it encounters other psi energy, even the low-level psi of a normal human. Mind bombs are described as packets of condensed psi energy that are programmed to generate a specific response when triggered. These responses usually include some kind of hypnagogic suggestion or hallucination and can severely damage neural pathways. Like all attacks, they can vary in severity from those that induce only a mild headache to those that are permanently debilitating. Okay. Mind bomb? That was a new one, right?
Can you help her?
I don't know. And where the hell are the other two?
We split up earlier. I don't know where they are now.
Why the hell would you split up?
Look, we didn't plan this, Celeste. We weren't expecting to encounter anyone. We were just at the location where one victim was last seen. There was no reason for anyone to be there.
But someone was.
We didn't see them at first. Tara was expanding her sphere, looking for psychometric traces of the victim. She suddenly went down screaming. Someone nearby took off running. I didn't even get a look at them. Jack followed and Rowan went after him. They told me to get Tara back to Cordis, and that's what I did.
Idiots.
She said it more to herself than anyone else, but there was worry written on her face. Tara suddenly bolted upright, staring straight ahead, pupils impossibly dilated as she reached out towards nothing. The eyes again! The eyes? I'm like... When they brought her in and it was like she's muttering and stuff, I'm like, that sounds a lot like Rory. The timing's a little coincidental. Ah, the eyes, the eyes.
The eyes? They're all around me. They see me.
She grabbed Celeste by the front of her shirt.
He sees me. He sees everything. He's going to devour me. He's going to...
Celeste put a hand in front of her face and Tara went limp. Eyes again. What in the world was going on? And what was a mind bomb that it could do this to someone? It had to be some sort of mental attack based on the name alone. And given the woman's state, I assumed it was a pretty bad one. It was the bit about the eyes that threw me, though. That had to be more than a coincidence, right? Rory had mentioned something about that in New Albion, and again just now. Did Rory have some sort of connection to the disappearances? He wasn't the one responsible. That didn't make any sense. But his situation might be related. That made me even more determined to make sure I told the others about my conversation with him. I was still reeling from that revelation while Celeste had already started treating Tara. Morgan, maybe you should try your touchy-touch ability thing that you did to Rory and see if it helps. Though a struggle, I pushed away the other thoughts and focused on what she was doing with her Psi this time, keen to understand just how her abilities worked. They were, as Jack had said, abnormal, so I watched intently as her Psi energy wove its way through Tara's body. If I sort of caged in Celeste and the woman, it was like being able to mentally focus in and magnify what she was doing. I couldn't really see it happening, but I was somehow aware the Psi Celeste was pouring into Tara's body was repairing cell damage as it spread through her. Repairing damage, stabilizing brain chemicals, lowering blood pressure. How fascinating. So this was biokinesis. I let the color of her Psi bleed into mine, wondering if mimicking it would give me a greater understanding of how it worked. I became more aware that Celeste was struggling to undo the damage. In Tara's mind was a knot of tangled Psi energy. I could see Celeste's Psi winding around it. The energy couldn't be Tara's. It wasn't red like a bishop should be. Is that the mind bomb? Or maybe a remnant of it? Looking at it was difficult. It was like I struggled to focus my mind on it somehow. Like trying to focus on something while looking through blurry glass. Strange.
Out of the way! Move it!
The room burst into excitement again as Rowan pushed his way in, half carrying someone else with him. Oh god, is it Jack? Jack? Jack! No, I knew this was going to happen one day. Everything else was forgotten in an instant. Rowan didn't look great either, but Jack had the worst of it. Whatever it was, a fight from the looks of it. Before I realized what I was doing, I was running across the lobby, shoving my way through the people. Rowan! What happened?
Where's Cell? He's hurt.
She's busy with
Tara. What the hell happened after we separated? The bastard we followed wasn't alone.
He dragged Jack to one of the sofas, laying him on it as gently as he could. I frantically knelt beside him, repeating his name, though he was obviously unconscious. Oh no, our girl's definitely fallen. No, no, no. His brow furrowed in pain, and a soft groan escaped him. An icy shaft went through my heart at that sound. No, Jack. What do I do? What do I do? I couldn't lose him.
Who were they that they could mess Jack up like this? I don't know. They were weird. They were acting weird. They looked weird. And they were strong. I barely got him away.
He's bleeding a lot! My hands fluttered anxiously over his torso, but I was afraid to touch him. Blood had soaked through his shirt, giving it a faint sheen. Enough that I could see he'd already lost a lot.
They shot him when we were retreating. I think they were F-class. One of them was... I don't know. I've never seen anyone do something like that. And I've seen people do weird-ass things with their Psi.
Okay, not the cautious. He needs a hospital. Yes, here in Delphine. Good luck with that. So it's either emotional or confident. Celeste is already struggling with Terra. So it's not like I can stop Jack's bleeding and she can come and take care of it. And we've already let some of her Psi bleed into us. So let's take a crack at it. What's the worst that could happen? That's it!
What?
I wasn't talking to you. Swallowing hard, I set my hands on Jack's torso, shutting my eyes.
The hell are you doing?
Poor Jack. I didn't answer, instead trying to mentally block everyone else out. What I was doing was trying to save Jack, thank you very much. I had just watched Celeste do this. I might not be an expert at mimicking yet, but I could try. At the very least, I could try to stop the bleeding. Sort of a quick first aid treatment until Celeste could take a closer look. My Psi was still dyed amber from mimicking her earlier. I could do this. Rowan was saying something, but I ignored him. Oh, there she goes. I blocked out everything around me and caged Jack's body with my Psi, letting it wind itself into Jack's body, tentatively touching the wound on his side. Just like with Terra, I could see the damaged tissue running deep inside him. He has some internal bleeding. There are a lot of damaged blood vessels. I have to stop the bleeding fast.
Holy hell. Are you mimicking Celeste?
Healer! For those who don't have their medical license yet. Amazing. I barely heard him. Jack had several other injuries besides the one in his side, but I left those alone. None were life-threatening. But there was something else. Disruption. In his brain waves? That was the damage from the Psi burst. It was a problem, but I might need to let Celeste deal with it. For now, I needed to focus on stopping the internal bleeding. My medical knowledge was lacking, but within seconds, I realized I didn't need it to help him. I didn't have to do something complex like imagine the process of blood clotting or cells repairing themselves. I just needed to imagine it at the macro level. Like giving a command and letting his body work out the details. Jack's body could naturally regenerate faster than normal, but his Psi was disrupted, so I didn't think his biokinesis was working. That's fine. I can do this. I just had to thread my Psi through his body the way Celeste had done to Terra. Utilizing Psi at such small scale seemed like it would be hard, but doing it for myself I could understand exactly how it worked. Celeste couldn't see the damage on a cellular level with her eyes, but she could sense it. And so could I. I condensed my Psi into smaller and smaller threads, dispersing it through the wound. And I remembered Sylvia's words about setting up a cage. It wasn't going to be easy. It was a large wound, and healing was a complex process. It was difficult to focus on everything at once. I had to think smaller. Instead of trying to do it all at once, I set up a cage around the area I wanted to focus on. Close up the damaged blood vessels to stop the bleeding. Find the damaged areas and increase cell division to regenerate the damaged tissue. Then move to the next location. The energy Jack would normally use for healing was supplied by my Psi instead, so it didn't stress his body to regenerate so fast. I probably wasn't as efficient as Celeste, but I could... Something nudged my shoulder. I tried to shake it off, scrunching my brow as I attempted to keep my focus. It nudged me again. Leave me alone. I need... Something gripped my shoulders and yanked me back hard. I went wheeling backwards, falling hard on the floor as the room and everything else suddenly bled back in.
I said stop!
What? I looked up at Rowan with blurred vision and realized my head was screaming.
Are you trying to kill yourself?
I realized the surrounding room was quiet. Oh, our girl's been injured. Something wet landed on my upper lip. I reached up to find blood.
I get you want to help him, but there's no point if you hurt yourself in the process.
Ah, I overtaxed myself with just that much? To think I was this weak. Did I at least repair the worst of the damage?
Worst of it? You completely repaired that injury on his side, you idiot! Even Celeste wouldn't have healed it in one go.
What? I scrambled closer to get a better look, ignoring the dizziness. And he was right. I hadn't intended to do that. Thank God.
June, let's get this jerk to his room to rest. And you, never do that again.
Sorry, Dad, I didn't know.
Someone pick this idiot up off the floor and get her something to stop that blood nose.
Together, he and June picked Jack up and started away with him. Several people rushed to me, pulling me to my feet. It hadn't felt like I was overtaxing myself while I was doing it, but I would need to rest after this. I'm fine. I shrugged everyone's hands off, keeping one hand to my nose. I followed Rowan and June, because even after that I wanted to make sure Jack was okay. Ooh, we get a new room in this place. Very nice. It was a long time before Celeste finally came to check on him. She wasn't in great shape, but she wanted to check on the damage from the psi burst, which, fortunately, wasn't bad enough to warrant her doing anything. And the injury I healed was gone as well. She did little beyond stabilize his psi, exhausted as she was. She said he wasn't in a state where he needed more than that, and the rest of us encouraged her to reserve her strength and rest. Despite the blood nose and headache, I had only a mild case of fatigue. Celeste let me off with a glare and ordered to rest. I promised I'd stay with Jack since I was better off than she was. They brought my blankets from my room so I could sleep in his. Aww, my goodness, my heart. If he needed anything, I'd be right there. I lay beside him for a while, watching him sleep. There was never a chance to tell everyone what happened earlier with Rory. It would have to wait, I guess. And I eventually dozed off next to him, just relieved he was okay.